after the game, we have our seniors share about their season and, talk to the team and whatever they want to say. A couple of the girls were like, I wasn't even going to play high school. I'm just so burnt out on soccer. And they said, but this season, like, just rejuvenated my love for it. And I'm
That's
like not
awesome.
thinking I'm going to play in college. And just this team was just incredible. And it was like, all right, we're doing something right here. I don't know,
Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah.
what the formula, how can we repeat this? But it was really cool. And it
Yeah.
was just because it's bigger than soccer, right? It's just bigger than soccer.
Welcome to the How Soccer Explains Leadership podcast, where we explore leadership principles through the lens of the beautiful game.
Welcome back to How Soccer Explains Leadership. Thanks again for being a part of the conversation. I'm Phil Dark, your host, and with me again, we had a little hiatus, but with me again is my brother, my co-host, Paul Jobson. Paul, how you doing, man?
Doing well, Phil. We were kicked off a spring season here. Warrior Way is underway in our Woodway community, and then this year we kicked off a similar program in our East Waco community as well, and that started this last weekend. So we're running, man. It's great. We've got our second session tonight for our Woodway area, and got a group of 30 plus already committed for Guatemala this summer. And so
Awesome.
those things are running pretty well, as long as catching up with running alongside my kids and all their sporting events starting up as well. So, but things are good, and just really enjoying the time with the kids. Some of them are doing Warrior Way with us. My two older ones are working Warrior Way, so watching them coach alongside some veteran coaches is a lot of fun, and seeing their personalities really start to shine in those environments of having some leadership roles now and some responsibility, because my older two are almost 16 and 13. So watching them do that is fun. And then watching them compete in their sports and make mistakes, but have some successes too. It's I don't know, it's a fun time. And these are moments, the last week where, I really look back and go, okay, the decision to retire from college soccer was 100% the right thing, and just really, really enjoying these last, what is it, 3.5 years almost now of being out,
Wow.
which is crazy. So it's been great. So, but yeah, that's what's going on here, man. I don't know
That's
what's the
awesome.
latest over there with you guys. How are things ramping up this spring for you?
Yeah, it's I was just thinking as you're talking there, I neglected to let everyone know this is our season 12 halftime show.
Oh yeah.
And you're talking about time flying. It's like, man, that's just crazy because we actually recast in this half the second interview. You were obviously the first interview. The second interview ever done on How Soccer Explains Leadership with Pete Kipley. It's a fun one on music and some other stuff we'll talk about later in the episode. But I was just like reflecting on the how much cool stuff has happened over the years, and just with the podcast, with even as you're talking about your transition and everything, and how we've kind of walked through that in the show, which is pretty cool, but personally, man, last time we were talking, I was getting ready to go down to I think it was the semifinal game for the CIF. And so that was just an incredible season with that team. We ended up losing in the final,
Mm.
double overtime, last
Oh, wow.
6 minutes left in the game. Just our girls were gassed. We had basically 12 girls that played. So to go through a playoff run and go into a double overtime game where they gave everything they had, the goal was 5 girls stabbing at a ball that if they had their legs, the first girl would have gotten it. So
Mm.
it just is what it is. It was a bummer. It was a team we'd played many times, and, it was the third time we played them in the season. And it was fun. It was such a fun run. But what was the best part about it was not, the winning and the losing at the end of the season. So we ended up playing in the Northern California, because the top two teams in the section go to NorCal playoffs, and we played a St. Francis in the Bay Area team that was unreal. Like, you
Yeah.
every so often you just play a team that's just better, right? And that was that team. Like they had a Chinese national team player a U15 women's national team player, a bunch of girls going to Xavier, Ole Miss, all over the country. Great players. They were just pinging, bam, one touch, boom, 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 boom. One of my players comes up to me at halftime. She's like, "Coach, like, I feel like they have an extra player on the field. Like, it's there. Like, what am I supposed to do?"
Yeah.
Just play your best. Like that's all you can do. That's all I could ask. I was just watching. They ended up winning Northern California championship. But what was cool about it was after the game, our girls, we have our seniors share about their season and just, talk to the team and whatever they want to say. One of our girls was like, I'm always about winning. Like that's what I've always been about. I just love to win. I hate losing. She says, but about halfway through the season, it clicked in that I just didn't want to stop playing with these girls. Like I didn't want to stop playing with you, my teammates, and she goes, that's what started mattering. And I was like, okay, you're starting to get it. You're starting to get it, like this is so cool. And other girls were just saying, I regained my love for the game. And I was, a couple of girls were like, I wasn't even going to play high school. I'm just so burnt out on soccer. And they said, but this season, like just rejuvenated my love for it. And I'm
That's
like
awesome.
not thinking I'm going to play in college. And just this team was just incredible. And it was like, all right, we're doing something right here. I don't know,
Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah.
what the formula, how can we repeat this? But it was really cool. And then on the drive home, the 2.5 hour bus ride home from that game, the girls were like partying on the bus, like we'd won, and
Yeah.
it was just because it's bigger than soccer, right? It's just bigger than soccer.
Yeah.
And I was so proud. I was so proud. It was so much fun and great year. And during the one-on-ones we did, exit interviews with them. And a couple of girls were just crying. These girls hardly played and they're like crying during the interviews. And I'm like, what's wrong? Is everything okay? And they're like, we just don't want it to be over. We don't want it to end. It's over.
Yeah.
The season's done, and it's like, yeah, it was really cool. It was really cool. So that's awesome. And,
Yeah.
a lot of other
That's so
stuff
cool.
going on, but, we're getting back into Honduras with, ministry stuff and going to be doing some soccer stuff down there. So if you're listening and you have a team and you'd love to do, you want to do a mission trip or somewhere, and you can always talk to Paul or me about that. And we have opportunities to be able to do that now in Honduras, which is really cool. They have to be the right fit, but that's something that I'm excited about getting back into and seeing how we can do some sports ministry down there. So it's just a lot of stuff going on. It's crazy. It's only been a few weeks since we chatted, but the movement in life does not stop, and it's been pretty crazy. But mostly, I don't say all good stuff, but mostly really good stuff. But let's get into it. Let's get to our season. Speaking of good stuff, we kicked off this season with Wells Thompson. Fun interview. We were trying to get him on for a long time, and not only a fun interview, but just it was a lot of really deep, cool stuff in that conversation. Just about his journey, and I just would love to hear your thoughts. Gonna kick off that conversation about Wells.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of hit it. I mean, Wells is one of these guys that I think, what enters my mind when I think about talking to Wells is like he's the guy I think we could have on, once a year or more. I mean, you can have him on more, but there's always a lot of depth to what he's saying. Extremely transparent and open about himself and his journey, and a great testimony to how God's worked in his life through a lot of uncertainty and current uncertainty, to be quite honest, as well, and how he's navigated all of that with grace and humility. He may not always think that way, but it seems to come out that way on our side. But it's seen a lot and done a lot as well. He's had some extreme highs and then some extreme lows, and you get to hear a lot of that and really see truly who he is and the struggles he has. And I love that because I think that resonates really, really well, I think, with our listeners and with me specifically. I consider myself a listener of understanding, like we don't see enough vulnerability in our world anymore. It's all about what's going great because we're in the social media world, and that's what sells. But to hear somebody's genuine successes through struggle at times, and it's great to hear, he's a real human being, and I value that about Wells and how he communicates so openly and honestly in all that he does, and just continues to strive for serving God the best he can in all that he does. So yeah, great interview. And again, somebody I think that is going to continue to experience life at its fullest in all that he does. And but yeah, somebody I think I would love to have on again sometime to see what's next. Right, there's always something new going on with Wells.
Yeah, no, you said it very, very well. And he actually said during during the conversation that vulnerability is a superpower, and he's using that, right?
Yeah.
And he talked about some really cool things. He about how, because with soccer resilience, he obviously started that with Brad Miller, but even talking about how, why he transitioned away from that, right? And talking about how his faith journey really helps him understand that the power really is from without. And if you're not focused on God and what he's doing, it's gonna fall flat at some point,
Yeah.
and that was something that was really powerful in that conversation, and something that I think a lot of people can relate with, right? When they're trying so hard internally, and it's just, man, it falls flat. But the other thing that was cool is, he's like, look, so much great stuff has come out of it, and so much great stuff is continuing to come out of it, and seeing, Diego pick it up from him, and and getting stuff from Brad all the time, and it's great stuff. Is you just got to understand, the whole picture, right? And I
Yeah.
think he did a really good job in that, and just shows his integrity, that he couldn't do it with a full heart for whatever reason at that season, and said, I can't do something I don't fully believe in, like, for whatever reason. And again, like he said, it's not that what they're doing is wrong. It's just he couldn't do it with everything he had. And it was a really good conversation, because there's nuances to everything, right? There's nuances to that decision and that conversation. But even like now, like we were talking about, we're gonna hopefully get him on when he knows what he's doing, because he's in this transition period, and that, you're just kind of looking for that thing that you're supposed to be doing. What's the next step? And trying different things, and you're going after different opportunities, and you want to make sure it's the right thing for you, for your family, for everything, and not just a job that's getting you from A to B, but something that you're really pour into and be able to do with a full heart. And so he also talked a lot about what actually goes into being a pro athlete.
Yeah.
Some of the things about leadership, leading from the bench. Lots of really cool conversations in there that really is a lot of what we're doing on this show and why we do what we do. And so just really want to encourage people, if you did not listen to that episode, if you didn't check out Wells in that conversation, I definitely recommend that you do that. If whether you're a player, whether you're a parent, whether you're a coach, whatever it is, whether you're just a business person who wants to learn more stuff about integrity and vulnerability and different things like that, that conversation really hit it on the head.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned that piece about how he talks about what it takes to be a pro. I mean, I would really encourage people, whether they're a young player who's aspiring to do that, or a parent of someone who is, I hate to say, aspiring for their child to be that, based on a conversation we had prior to the start of the show. But
Yeah.
I think that's something that people should listen to, because I don't think the answer is what you expect. So a little tease there to go listen to the episode. But I think that, I mean, this guy was a pro, and you'll hear his story and how he became a pro, and it's an unlikely story and how he navigated it and all those things. But hear directly from somebody who did it, of what it actually takes to do that. I think that's a valuable piece on top of everything that you just said. I do want to dive in. Like, it's not just a brush over. I think that was a really important piece to some folks that probably need to hear what that actually takes, from his perspective. And it was
Absolutely.
not an easy journey for him.
No, and it wasn't your typical, right? I mean,
Right.
you little tease, like he didn't make ODP back when ODP was the path
Yeah, that was the
to
thing.
getting to college. It was it. It
Yeah.
was it. And if you didn't make ODP, well, then you're probably not going to make it in college. You're probably not going to make it in whatever. And he didn't, and didn't really get recruited out of high school. He went to Wake Forest, but that was another story of how that even happened. And then from there, it's a really cool story of like, it's not rags to riches, but it's just working hard, going after it, taking the chances that you're given and making the most of them. And
Yeah.
then, ending up being the number 5 pick in the MLS draft, which is another fun story there on how that happened and why he was surprised and why the
Yeah.
teammate of his was surprised.
Yeah.
So anyway, you'll definitely enjoy that conversation. And it's just fun. I mean, it's just fun too. I mean, I really just enjoyed it. Right. So, all right. So we went from that and, speaking of going to college and knowing what to do and how to navigate all of that, we had our friend Don Williams back on, talking about that, finding the right fit, which is, if you know very little about Don, you'll still know finding the right fit is his mantra, right? Like that's what he talks about, and we went into that a little deeper than we did the first time we were with him, and what that looks like, and also what it looks like in the current landscape. That's the thing about this college landscape right now is since we had him on in 2021, it has changed dramatically. Right, in 4 years, it's like a whole different world. And, I just had a player that got offered a team manager spot on a team saying, we don't have a spot for you right now, but we will in spring. And so you can be a team manager in the fall. And it's like, they're getting creative with, and somebody's like, oh, that's insulting. I was like, I don't think so in this current landscape. I think they're just getting creative to get people to fill those roster spots they didn't have before. Right. And, I don't know. What do you think about that conversation with Don?
Yeah, I mean, it's a constantly changing landscape, excuse me, especially right now. And I do think that, you can just tell from if you've heard any of the interviews with Don, but especially this one, just a wealth of knowledge when it comes to that. He's very much ingrained into what's going on currently in the game on the women's side and the men's side, and has a great staff of people around him that are helping families navigate that. And it is a crazy, crazy world. I would just say families that, like, if they had a kid who was playing college soccer or maybe went 2 years ago and now they've got a younger child who's coming through it, it's totally different. They're having a totally different experience with their kid than they did with their first kid, I think. I mean, because it has changed that much even in the last couple of years. And I do think it's still a bit of the wild west. I don't think it's fully shaken out yet. So it's going to continue to change. And Don is a great resource to have on, consistently, really, to kind of dive into the changes and what's going on. And we talked about, I think every time we have Don on, we talk about the status of the family aspect of that as well, and how families and parents play into that, and what parents' roles should be. And there's some basic things we go over every time, but it's definitely a great resource for those families that are trying to navigate what does the college landscape look like, because it is constantly changing, constantly.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that was in that too, that a lot of people are, whether it's up in arms, people are frustrated, whatever, is the international player conversation, right? And he brought some, I think, perspective and truth to that conversation, as well, as he's been doing a lot online. I don't go onto social media very much anymore, but when I do, I see him talking about that a lot, because I think a lot of people are saying, oh, the international players are taking all the roster spots and this and this and this. And, they're taking some. But at the end of the day, it's like, well, then be better.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's not a right to get a college spot. These college teams are trying to be the best college team they can be. And if they can get an international player, and quite frankly, international players are people too, right? So they're going to be coming in, and if they're the best player for the spot. Now, if they're not the best player for the spot, then typically what happens is they realize that, and something happens, and then they tell them they're not going to be playing, and then that player transfers, and the same as anybody else would, or whatever, or they just stay at the school and are going to get a good education and be able to do whatever they're going to do. So,
Yeah.
I think he brings some perspective to that I really appreciated. And it was something that I think is a necessary conversation because there's a lot of things with roster spots shrinking, or the roster sizes shrinking, caps. They have a lot of players that are gonna be there. It's similar to when COVID happened, and then they have all the fifth year seniors or fifth year that went to sixth year, right? And so roster spots were shrinking then too for different reasons. So this one, it seems to be, will be more stable on the back end. But then I think there's also going to be a lot more internationals coming in because they see such an incredible opportunity. We were just talking about this beforehand, is if you have the opportunity to go to 4 years, 5 years of school paid for, like, it's so much better than the vast, vast majority of professional opportunities. In my opinion, I'm not going to make decisions for people, but I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah. I mean, I just think that, a couple things, I think, I don't know, my brain's going 5 different ways right now. I'm trying to, which lane I want to jump into, but I think from the international players, I probably might've said on this episode, I know I say it when I talk to clubs and do talks. College coaches have a job and their job is to win games.
Mm-hmm.
Cut and dry. Yes, you got to graduate kids. You got to bring in great people for the community. But at the end of the day, if a coach isn't winning games, they're going to get fired. I mean, that's how it works. So the coach is going to go find the best players.
Right.
Okay. If they're in Missouri or Florida or England or Scotland or Iceland or Dubai or wherever it may be, if they get the best players, they're going to bring them in. It doesn't matter where they're from. So for a family to be mad that these colleges are trying to, these guys are trying to keep their jobs, guys and girls are trying to keep their jobs, it's a ridiculous thing. And it's a selfish thing, actually, that these families are thinking, well, my kid deserves because, the kid doesn't deserve anything unless they've done the work to get there and they've done it better than everybody else. Then they deserve that opportunity. That's what, we talk a little bit in the episode about, balancing competition with enjoyment, right? My kids are playing because they love soccer, not because they're trying to get a college education paid for because of their ability, their soccer ability. And if their enjoyment leads to the ability to have college paid for, that was my story. I loved soccer enough to where I got a college scholarship. Same with my wife. Awesome. But if at any point I fell out of love with soccer, my parents were like, no problem. That's not, so if your goal is to pay for college, start saving. Okay. Don't bank on your kids' soccer ability to pay for college or any sport. Fill in sport here. Okay. But I do think with these international players or really anybody that are filling roster spots, it's competitive. I mean, it's really competitive. So again, your kid needs to enjoy the game, love the game. If that leads to an opportunity collegiately, great. We talk about it on one of the episode that we had in here of how as families we navigate that. And so that kind of leads into our episode of, hey, how are you as a family, setting things up as priorities, and what are the goals and things you're trying to attain as a family. So I put it into that category. But Don's always a great guest. He's full of knowledge. Been doing this a really long time, seen it all, done it all, and is a great resource. I'm glad we have him as part of our crew to check in with now and again.
Absolutely. No, and that's what I love. I love that we can do that. We talk a few of our guests we're going to get back on for a second time. Don's one of those. We had Brad Miller on for a second. Hoping to get Phil Smith again. He's got a lot of updates.
Oh yeah.
I just talked to him. What did he do? He just it's some like Pokemon type thing that he just got the European rights for. That guy never stops,
Yeah.
He's got story after story. Some of the stories he can't share on the air, but that guy is another one of those that hopefully we'll get on. Now that I've teased it, I got to get him back on.
Yeah, now you gotta have him on.
I know, and we will, because he's got some cool, fun stories about his Osset United team. He's starting an academy up there, so that'd be fun for him.
Yeah,
but I was gonna, you segued so well. It's like we've done this before.
Yeah.
But I'm going to skip a little bit because we had the Brad Kenney episode, which we're going to come back to. But we also had this kind of extra time episode where we piggybacked on that conversation with Don, and just you and I had a conversation about a lot of stuff in the game, and it was really, full disclosure, vulnerability, it was a, hey, let's have a conversation about this stuff. And we just had the conversation. And I think we need to do that more, quite frankly, because it wasn't, I mean, this is never scripted, but it was really not. There was no outline. It's just like, let's just have a conversation. And it really went where it went based on these different conversations that you and I have been having that, we heard from Dawn, we, heard a little bit from Wells and other things that are going on. And it was I had a really good time. We don't need to rehash it.
Yeah.
If there's anything you wanted to throw out there about it, I'd love to hear that. But it really was just going through the priorities. It was entitled Priorities, Values, and Player Development, right? So these are family priorities, family values. These are coaches' priorities, coaches' values, player priority, player values. Like what is it that goes into this thing called youth, college, development, whatever thing? And it is a changing landscape. But at the end of the day, there are things that you and I, and you can listen to that episode, believe need to be core, need to be foundational, need to be not ever changing, but need to be in there, that will then that will inform the decisions that into this ever changing world. So if you have this kind of rock you're standing on, when all of this is swirling around, you're not freaking out going, what the heck am I going to do? Because you have your kind of mission, values. This is what we're doing as a family. This is what we're doing with kind of with our journey in this world. I think it's more important than ever to have that. So what do you think?
Yeah. And I think just overall making sure, and, I fall into this too, I've got kids that are playing, but not falling into the traps of, shiny object syndrome. We talk about filming games and things like that, or, what are we really trying to accomplish here? And are we enjoying, one of my kids, we don't talk about this in the episode, but it kind of goes along with it. One of my kids the other day is like, Dad, why don't you ever pull out your phone during my games and film me? So I want to see what I'm like, buddy, because I can't watch the game and film with my phone. Like, I want to watch you play and enjoy it. So, I mean, we don't have tons of like videos of our kids playing sports because we're actually watching the games. And I think it something I thought about the other day when he was asking me that. I'm like, buddy, you can't watch the game that way,
Totally.
So, but I love that. I would love to do more of that as well. We just kind of, like you said, nothing's really scripted, but we just kind of came into it and we're raw and vulnerable with the things that were top of mind. And I'd love to dive into things when it comes to specifically to coaching at the youth level. We talk about some of the other episodes talking about the enjoyment of the game and how do we do that? How do we do that as parents? How do we do that as coaches in the youth game at the what aren't the top levels of the game? Because I'm sure we have a lot of folks who are listening that their kids don't compete in these ECNL and MLS Next leagues, but they love the game, and we probably should talk about some of that.
Absolutely. No, it's so funny you say that about filming because, Becca and I, we tend to tag team it with the different games, right? And so she'll go to one and she films a lot more than I do. I feel bad every so often. I try to get like at least like a corner kick a game or something where I film it so I can send it to her because she's sending me like play-by-play videos half the time and she's like, why don't you video? And I'm like, same thing. I'm like, I can't. I won't enjoy the game. Like I won't just sit there. And I see that all the time along the sideline. You see the cameras up, the VO or the trace or whatever, and then you see every parent, like not every, but a lot of the parents pulling out their phones and filming all these different things. And I'm like, man, how you just gotta. And I don't know. Maybe that just comes from I watch a lot of soccer and you do too or have over the years, and it's like. You just want to enjoy the moment, and it's hard to enjoy the moment when you're trying to catch the moment on a video and for whatever. When 90% of the time you film, nothing happens. And so it's like, oh, no, nothing. Yeah. So, but yeah, that's something. I think that it goes down to like, are we enjoying this?
Yeah.
Are we enjoying the process? Are you enjoying the journey? Right? Like they say, the destination is the journey, right? I fear that people are missing that big time. It's like, because parents then go, oh, my kid didn't even play in college. What was the point? It's like, you missed it completely. But that needs to start when you're little, right? Like, it needs to start when you're little, and it needs to be constant conversation, and it needs to be, hey, if you don't want to play, that's cool. Not a problem. Rather than, oh, I let everyone down if I don't play in college. And that's something that, man, if that's at all even an inkling of a feeling or a concern in your kid, like, nip that in the bud wherever you're at in the process, and even if that's college, like my kids, 2 of them stopped playing in college. We've had that conversation before. And my one who was injury, but the other one was like, Dad, are you disappointed? Or no, are you mad? She said, are you mad? And I go, I'm not mad.
Right.
I'm not. I go, am I bummed I don't get to watch you play anymore? Yeah, I love watching you play. But like, it's absolutely the right decision for you. And 100%. And you got to remember, I stopped playing in college too. Right. Like, so, and that's okay, because it's going to be a personal decision. If you're on a team that, is not what you're, like, again, you love it, work ethic, and, and you're really, really good. If you don't have all 3 of those things, then it's going to be really hard to continue doing it. So, anyway, any last thoughts on that?
No, more. I think we should do more of that.
Yeah, I agree. And folks, if you disagree with that and you're like, I don't like when you and Paul just talk, then let us know that too.
Let us know,
please. I've heard from a few people that they like it, so I would love to hear from you folks. But again, full transparency and vulnerability, please lay it on us. If you're like, hey, you guys, try to keep it clean, just in case my kid's looking over my shoulder. But no, but yeah, we love having these conversations. We love learning. I mean, Paul and I talk about it all the time. Why we do this is to help people, yes, but also we love learning from these people, and we hope you're learning from them too. And sometimes we just want to kind of debrief what we're learning a little bit, and also things that we might be able to add based on our experiences and our different, similar in some ways, but we're at different stages with our kids, and we've been through different things personally. And so, no one's played at a high of a level as Marcy, obviously, but we played at different levels and kind of even have different experiences within all of that. So that's kind of cool too. So, anyway, the last one we have is another, these were some cool interviews. Like, I love it was kind of a similar theme. But this guy, Brad Kenney, who we were able to interview, or I was able to interview, unfortunately you weren't able to join in that one, but he was actually Wells Thompson's chaplain at Colorado Rapids. And Wells had, I think he either mentioned him in the episode that we did with him, or he talked about it off camera, but it was just this cool little connection there. But I think the theme of all of the different episodes is life outside the game, and the importance of the whole picture of what you're doing, what you're learning. And this is even at the pro level. Brad coming into this, and his story is really cool. We'll talk about that here in a minute. But also just how he navigates the chaplain role in the context of having a lot of different worldviews. Because you come into a chaplain role in a team, and if you didn't listen to the episode, I encourage you to go check it out, because he'll share. It's not just a Christian chaplain; it's a chaplain for people in their spiritual journey, right? So he is coming into that as a Christian, but with Muslims, saying, "How can I help you further your faith? And if you ever want to have the conversation about my beliefs, I'm here to have that conversation." But he shared a story about Ramadan and a guy who was fasting and was worried about he was trying to get an exception from the, Imam, all these different people. I don't know the right lingo, but was afraid to tell his coach that he was fasting. And so Brad's like, hey, can I go talk to the coach for you and see if we can work this out? And so they ended up working out a deal where he was able to kind of get an exception at some level, but also the coach understood, like, this is when we're going to be fasting. How can we do it and honor it, but also know that, again, we got to win the games. And if you're not full strength, then we can't do it. But those type things, which was it was a really interesting conversation. But I know you weren't there, so I'm curious to hear your kind of thoughts on that.
I think just overall, I think the chaplaincy role within any team is very interesting, and I think it's unique, and I think it's a role that most people really don't even understand. And you hit some of it right there with that one story. Is that I think people have a misconception of what a chaplain actually does and what their role is. I mean, you have a general idea, but I think you kind of got into
Sure.
some of the nuts and bolts of what people don't understand, and it's another opportunity of support for the player. And I always, I coached at a Christian university for a long time. Chaplaincy was a big deal at our school, but we were very hesitant of who we would allow be a chaplain for our program, because it is somebody who gets very intimate with players. And as a coach, a chaplain, as much as an athletic trainer, can ruin a team, because there's a lot of vulnerability there from players, and there's trust there amongst the coaches and the chaplain in it. But if it's done right, and obviously Brad's one that does it right, like it can be a extremely positive and forward moving piece within the program. And so I think that, I think there's some misconceptions about it and what it does and how it can affect the team, but it can be a make or break position within a program. So, and as you can tell, a lot of that has to do with the intimacy that these guys can drive with players that sometimes, especially professionally, these players are competing not only on the field, but they're competing for their job. Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's a lot
Yeah.
that goes into that. There's families that are affected by it and whatnot. So a chaplain can really come in and be, if a great partnership with the coach is there, can be an amazing resource for the coach too, not to like hear what's going on behind the scenes, but to know and trust, like, Phil, if you're the chaplain for my team and I know that I can trust you, who you are and what you're about, I don't really need to know what you're saying to the kids or to the players, because I trust you. And I know that they're being taken care of. And also know if there's an immediate need, like this situation, like you're going to come to me as a coach and say, hey, I have been talking with this player and here are some needs. How could we work through this? And I'm going to be more likely to work through that, where that if there's not a great relationship and you came to me with that same situation, I'd probably shut you down,
Totally.
So,
Yeah.
so
who are you
I think
and why are you
it's an
coming to me?
amazing, opportunity for a program to have somebody they really can trust. I've known some folks that have done that and done it very well. And I unfortunately been part of situations where a chaplain has been didn't understand their role. I'll say it that way.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. And a lot of times, a chaplain will come in and it's like, oh, we just do a talk on, the pregame chapel and that's it.
Yeah. Right.
And then they'll leave. And it's like, that's a guest speaker. It's not a
Yeah.
chaplain.
That's right.
Right. And that's kind of like a pastor who, is not shepherding the flock. It's like you're a speaker on Sunday. You're not a pastor. And so I think words matter, obviously. And I think he's also started Soccer Chaplains United, which is training up chaplains in that exact thing. Like, what is it? What is the role? And how do you do this well? And, obviously you need buy-in from the team and from the coach and from the higher ups. And most of the time it's a volunteer position. So, to build that trust takes time. And then when a new coach comes in, you got to start from scratch. It's like in Honduras, when a new government comes in, you're starting from scratch. You got to figure it out. Right. And, but what's cool about it is, he has relationships with the players, and he talks similar to Graham Daniels about, go from performance identity to purpose. And he's like, but then calling is really what you want to get him to. So it's similar to that received versus achieved identity conversation. It was a bit different, but he actually knows Graham Daniels and talked through that a little bit. But his story was pretty cool too. What do you think about his story? It's like, this is funny because it's like, oh yeah, of course it's a soccer guy, and he kind of is.
Yeah,
he
I mean,
is,
he has
is.
come to be one, right?
Yes,
You know,
yes, yes.
But I do think that beginning conversation of how he got, and I love that's how we start our conversation, is like, hey, tell us about yourself, because
Yeah.
it really does get to the heart of where things went, but how he got there, really, really cool story, and just encourage folks to go and obviously listen to that, because it's obviously got some humor in it as well. It's pretty funny. But how he got to where he is, and again, I think that's a unique thing about pretty much anybody we talk to, probably anybody we'll ever talk to, is that I think a lot of folks think there's certain roads or certain pathways to get to certain places, and rarely is that ever the case.
Yeah.
I mean, I have an accounting degree, the road to that was not normal. And I think that's the case with most people, but yeah, his story is is a great one. Absolutely along the way. It's pretty funny.
I just had a picture of you in a cubicle punching numbers, and I don't know that would work very well.
No,
Yeah.
but I did work for H&R Block when I was in college
Okay.
in our little town. And the best story I have is that a guy came in with a box full of receipts. And I'm looking through it. He bought like a lot of balloons and like paints and all this stuff. I'm like, so what do you do? It's like, I'm a clown.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice.
So I did tax return for the local clown. It was great.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. So yeah,
That's
I was like, I'm not going to be an accountant, I don't think.
So, the last thing, and we're not going to get into it too much, but Brad also has a cool book, The Soccer Psalms, where he takes I think it's 31 Psalms and translates them into soccer language. And it's pretty cool. You just definitely want to check that out. We don't need to go into the depth about that. You can pick that up on Amazon. You can go to the show notes in that episode and check it out. But listen to that episode to hear kind of what those are. He gives a couple examples. He gives an example of how one of them came to be, in connection with the MLS Cup victory that the Colorado Rapids had while he's chaplain. That was actually the one Wells Thompson played on. It was a nice little, how soccer explains leadership connection that we like to have.
Well, that's how you plan it out. I mean, that's how, as the producer of this program, that's intentional.
Yes. Very, very intentional. If there's one thing you know about this show is our intentionality. There is some, and often it gets completely blown up because of schedules and everything, but that's okay. But I also liked how he had, sometimes when we ask the question, what have you learned directly from the game that has impacted your marriage and parenting, and we get, sometimes just generalizations, and every so often we get like the stick in, like somebody said in the second episode, every so often we get touch the line or retaliator gets the red, right? Things like that. Brad gives us a few of those, and it's pretty cool. I'm not going to tell you what they are, but you can check them out in the episode. It's definitely, they're really good. There's 3 of them, and they're pretty cool. They're pretty cool things that he was thinking through and uses. And so, any last thoughts before we wrap up another halftime show?
Oh man, I'm excited about the season to come. It's always ever growing and ever changing. But again, we've mentioned it a few times on this episode, but love the feedback that we get from our listeners, and obviously we're doing that for them. I mean, there is some selfish gain of what we gain out of the information as well, but would love to hear what people are thinking and what they'd love to hear from, or send us guest ideas, as you've always said. So, but yeah, excited to see what the next season holds.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we got another. The second half will be solid. I know the one episode I know we're gonna have is with Frank Kelly. We're gonna get that, and Frank is actually a lacrosse guy, but has written a book and FC been a lot of work with FCA. He's just a great leader that I'm really excited to have that conversation. We're gonna have some other ones too. We have one that we've been trying to get on the books, and it hasn't clicked yet. If we get that one, that will be another fun, interesting conversation. So I'm not going to say who it is, because if we don't, then I don't want people to be, sending in complaints to me.
Right.
Although if you send in complaints, I'd love to hear it. Then we can learn from it and grow. Yeah. But yeah, definitely rate and review the show as well. Subscribe to the show if you haven't already, because then you get the episodes in your feed immediately, directly. But as always, you can learn about what we're talking about on the show through the show notes, whether it's Warrior Way, whether it's how soccer explains. Hopefully you know about how soccer explains leadership, but coaching the bigger game, whether it's disc stuff that we've talked about on the show, all that you can find in the show notes. We're not going to get into the details of all that, but the links are there, and anything that we talk about on the shows, you can get in those show notes as well from whatever episode. So if that's something you didn't know about, it's at howsoccerexplainsleadership.com. You can find all that information. And as always, folks, we hope that you're taking what you're learning from the show and you're using it to be a better parent, a better spouse, a better coach, a better leader, better in everything that you do. Continually remind yourself that soccer does explain life and leadership. Thanks a lot. Have a great couple weeks.